Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. If you are a man with no friends, it ain't because the world is against you. It ain't because people just don't understand you. And it definitely ain't because you were meant to be alone. No, sir, that's not how life works. A man with no friends. That's a man who hasn't done the work. See, life ain't meant to be lived solo. You can try to convince yourself that you don't need anybody, that you're better off alone. But let's be real, ain't nobody truly happy by themselves. Even the most successful, powerful people in the world, they got friends. They got people who check on them, people who push them forward, people who stand in their corner. No one is meant to do life alone. That's just the way we're built as human beings. From the moment we come into this world, we depend on relationships. First, it's our parents, then our siblings, and as we grow, we start looking for connections outside our families, people who understand us, support us, and make life easier to bear. That's the essence of friendship. It's not just about having someone to go to the movies with or share a meal. It's about having someone in your corner when life gets real. A man with no friends is a man without a support system, and that's a dangerous place to be. Because life is going to hit you hard. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when that time comes, when the weight of the world is on your shoulders, the question is, who's going to help you carry it? You might think you're strong enough to do it alone. You might have convinced yourself that you don't need anybody, that you're better off on your own. But that's just pride talking. That's just a defense mechanism to cover up the fact that deep down you feel isolated. Now, some people will say, well, I'm alone because I choose to be. I don't need friends. But let's be honest, most of the time, that's not the truth. Most of the time, a man with no friends isn't in that situation by choice. He's there because something in his actions, his attitude, or his mindset has pushed people away. And the problem with that, the longer you go without meaningful friendships, the harder it becomes to form them. People get used to not reaching out. You get used to not being invited. Before you know it, isolation becomes your normal. And that's a sad place to be. See, friendships do something powerful. They sharpen you. They hold you accountable. They give you perspective when you're too close to your own problems to see the bigger picture. When you're going through a tough time, real friends don't just sit back and watch, they step in. They remind you of who you are when you forget. They check you when you're wrong. They push you to be better. And that right there, that's something you can't put a price on. Think about the most successful people you know, the ones who have really made something of themselves. You'll notice something: they are surrounded by strong relationships. They have people they can call when they need advice, people who open doors for them, people who celebrate their wins. Because success is never a solo journey. Even when it looks like someone made it on their own, trust me, there were people behind the scenes helping them, guiding them, encouraging them. But if you're a man with no friends, none of that is happening for you. You have no one to celebrate your victories, no one to tell you when you're heading down the wrong path, no one to lift you up when you're feeling low. That means every challenge, every setback, every hardship, you're facing it all alone. And that kind of weight, that's not something any man was built to carry by himself. Now, some people might say, well, I've been hurt before. I trusted people and they let me down. And I get it. That pain is real. When you've been betrayed, when people you counted on walked away, it's easy to say, forget it. I don't need anybody. But let me tell you something, closing yourself off to friendships because of a few bad experiences is like refusing to eat because you had one bad meal. Not everyone is out to hurt you. Not everyone is going to betray you. But you'll never know that if you don't allow yourself to build new connections. A man with no friends isn't just lonely, he's missing out on opportunities, on growth, on wisdom, because life teaches you through people. Some lessons you can only learn through relationships. The right friends will introduce you to new perspectives, challenge your thinking, and push you to grow in ways you never would on your own. You can be smart, talented, and hardworking, but without meaningful connections, you're limiting yourself. And here's another thing, having no friends doesn't just affect you. It affects your family, your career, your mental health. If you're a father, what example are you setting for your children? Are you showing them the value of building strong relationships? Or are you teaching them that isolation is the way to go? If you're married, what kind of support do you have outside of your partner? Because no one person can be everything for you. If you're chasing success, who's helping you grow? Who's introducing you to new opportunities? Friendships are a necessary part of life, not just for the good times, but for survival. You don't have to have 100 people around you, but you do need a few real ones. People you can count on. People who can count on you. Because no matter how strong, independent, or self-sufficient you are, the truth is you were never meant to do this alone. If you find yourself without friends, the first thing you need to do is take a good, honest look in the mirror. Because friendships don't just disappear for no reason. People don't just stop calling, stop inviting, stop showing up unless there's something that made them pull away. And before you start blaming everybody else, before you start saying things like people are fake or nobody understands me, you need to ask yourself a hard question: is it me? See, self-reflection is uncomfortable. It forces you to admit things you might not want to face. But if you're a man with no friends, then you have to be willing to examine your own actions, your own mindset, and the way you treat people. Because the reality is, the way people respond to you is often a reflection of what you put out into the world. If you've pushed people away, if you've lost connections, if no one seems to stick around, then there's a reason for that. And 9 times out of 10, that reason is something within your control. Think about the way you interact with others. Are you the kind of person who only reaches out when you need something? Do you disappear when times get tough for someone else, but expect people to be there when you're struggling? Are you the guy who never listens, always talks about himself, and never asks how others are doing? People notice that. And over time, they get tired of it. Because nobody wants to be in a one-sided relationship where they're always giving and you're always taking. Then there's attitude. Are you always negative, always complaining, always finding something wrong with everything? People pick up on energy and nobody wants to be around someone who constantly brings the mood down. You might not even realize it. But if every conversation you have is about what's wrong in your life, what's unfair, what's frustrating, then after a while, people start avoiding you. Because life is hard enough as it is. Nobody wants to be around someone who makes it feel even heavier. And let's talk about respect, because that's a big one. How do you treat people? Do you listen when they talk, or are you always waiting for your turn to speak? Do you support your friends when they win, or do you secretly feel jealous and bitter? Are you reliable, or do you constantly let people down? Because let me tell you something, trust is the foundation of every good friendship. And if people can't trust you to be honest, to be supportive, to be present, then they won't stick around. Now, sometimes it's not about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you don't do. Friendships require effort. You can't just sit back and expect people to chase you, check on you, and make all the plans. Relationships are a two-way street. If you never reach out, if you never make an effort, if you never show up for people, then eventually they'll stop showing up for you. And when that happens, you might tell yourself, well, I guess they weren't real friends anyway. But that's just an excuse. Because the truth is, you didn't nurture those relationships. You let them fade. Self-reflection is about taking responsibility. It's about recognizing that if you're alone, if you're struggling to maintain friendships, then something needs to change. And that change starts with you. It starts with being more aware of how you treat people, how you engage with them, how you contribute to the relationship. Because at the end of the day, friendships aren't just about what you get. They're about what you give. The energy you give is the energy you get. That's one of the most important truths about life, and it applies to everything, including friendships. People don't just gravitate toward you because you exist. They gravitate toward you because of what you bring into their lives. And if you're a man with no friends, you need to ask yourself, what kind of energy have I been putting out into the world? Self-reflection is about taking responsibility. It's about recognizing that if you're alone, if you're struggling to maintain friendship, then something needs to change. And that change starts with you. It starts with being more aware of how you treat people, how you engage with them, how you contribute to the relationship. Because at the end of the day, friendships aren't just about what you get, they're about what you give. The energy you give is the energy you get. That's one of the most important truths about life, and it applies to everything, including friendships. People don't just gravitate toward you because you exist. They gravitate toward you because of what you bring into their lives. And if you're a man with no friends, you need to ask yourself, what kind of energy have I been putting out into the world? Now, let's talk about kindness and respect, because those two things go a long way. The way you treat people determines how they treat you in return. If you're rude, dismissive, or act like you're better than others, don't be surprised when people keep their distance. If you only talk to people when you need something, don't be shocked when nobody reaches out to you just to check in. The truth is, people remember how you make them feel. If you make people feel valued, if you show genuine interest in their lives, if you celebrate their wins instead of secretly feeling jealous, then you will naturally attract good friendships. But if you act like you're too busy, too important, or too self-absorbed to invest in others, then eventually people will stop investing in you. Another important factor is reliability. If you're the kind of person who always cancels plans, who never follows through on what you say, who disappears when people need you, then you can't expect others to stick around. Trust is a major part of friendships, and trust isn't just about honesty, it's about consistency. If people can't count on you, they won't keep you in their circle. Nobody wants a friend who only shows up when it's convenient for them. And let's not forget about gratitude. Do you show appreciation for the people in your life? Do you let them know that you value them, or do you take them for granted? One of the biggest reasons friendships fade isn't because of arguments or betrayals, it's because people stop feeling valued. If you never acknowledge the effort someone puts into the friendship, if you never take the time to say thank you or return the same energy they give you, then don't be surprised when they pull away. A lot of people think friendship is about how many people you have around you, but the truth is, it's not about numbers, it's about quality. A man with 100 acquaintances isn't necessarily rich in relationships, but a man with just 2 or 3 solid, trustworthy friends, that's someone who has something valuable. See, in life, you don't need a crowd, you need the right people in your corner, because the wrong people will drain you, use you, and abandon you when times get tough. But the right people, they'll uplift you, push you, and walk with you through the good times and the bad. Think about the people you called friends in the past. How many of them were really there for you when you needed them? How many of them celebrated your success without jealousy? How many of them checked in on you just to make sure you were doing okay without expecting anything in return? If you're being honest, you'll probably realize that most of the people who came and went weren't really friends. They were just there for convenience, for the good times, for what they could get from you. And when you had nothing to offer, they disappeared. That's why having a lot of people around you doesn't mean you're rich in friendships. It just means you're surrounded. And there's a big difference between the two. See, real friendship isn't just about having people to hang out with. It's about having people who add value to your life, people who encourage you to grow, who call you out when you're wrong, who want to see you win not because it benefits them, but because they genuinely care about you. Those are the kinds of friendships that matter. Now, let's talk about why quality matters more than quantity. Imagine you're going through the hardest time of your life. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe your relationship fell apart. Maybe you're struggling with something personal. If you have 100 so-called friends, how many of them are actually going to show up for you? How many are going to be there, not just to hear the story, but to help you get back on your feet? The sad truth is, when you strip away the fun times, the partying, the surface level conversations, most of those friendships won't hold up because they were never built on anything real. But if you have just 1 or 2 real ones, they'll be there, they'll check on you, they'll remind you of who you are when you forget. They won't just say, let me know if you need anything, they'll do something. That's the difference between having a crowd and having a real circle. A crowd watches. A circle supports. Another important thing to understand is that real friendships aren't always easy. A true friend isn't just someone who makes you laugh or agrees with everything you say. A true friend will challenge you, will tell you when you're wrong, will push you to do better. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable. But that's how you know it's real, because a real friend isn't afraid to tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. If all your friends just tell you what you want to hear, if they never check you when you're messing up, then those aren't friends. That's an audience. And an audience isn't there to help you grow, they're just there to watch. Now, building quality friendships takes effort. You can't just sit back and expect deep, meaningful relationships to form on their own. You have to invest in them. You have to be willing to give as much as you want to receive. If you want real, supportive, trustworthy friends, then you have to be one. That means showing up when it matters, keeping people when there's nothing in it for you. A lot of people say, I don't have any real friends. But the question is, have you been a real friend to anyone? Have you been there for people the way you want them to be there for you? Have you been reliable, honest, and supportive? Because you can't expect deep, meaningful relationships if you're not willing to put in the work. At the end of the day, a few real friends will always be more valuable than 100 fake ones. It's not about how many people know your name. It's about how many people actually care. It's about who's there for you when you have nothing to offer but yourself, because those are the friendships that last. Those are the friendships that make life better. And those are the friendships worth holding on to. Loneliness is more than just being alone. It's a weight that sits on your shoulders, a feeling that follows you everywhere, even in a crowded room. A man with no friends isn't just physically alone, he carries a sense of isolation that affects his mind, his emotions, and even his future. And the dangerous thing about loneliness is that it doesn't just sit still, it grows. It starts as a quiet feeling in the background, but if you don't do something about it, it starts to shape the way you think, the way you act, and the way you see yourself. One of the biggest dangers of loneliness is that it messes with your mind. When you spend too much time by yourself, your thoughts become your only company, and if those thoughts aren't positive, they start to turn against you. You begin to overthink, replay conversations, question your worth, and convince yourself that maybe you're just not meant to have strong relationships. And when you believe that, you stop trying, you stop putting yourself out there, you stop making an effort. And before you know it, isolation becomes normal. The scary part is that the longer you stay isolated, the harder it becomes to break free from it. Human beings are wired for connection, and when we don't have it, we start to feel lost. Studies have shown that long-term loneliness can lead to stress, anxiety, and even depression. It can affect your self-esteem, your motivation, and your ability to trust people. And that's the trap, because the more isolated you feel, the more you pull away, and the more you pull away, the lonelier you become. It's a cycle that keeps repeating unless you make the decision to break it. But loneliness doesn't just affect your emotions, it affects your future. Think about the opportunities that come from friendships. The best jobs, the best experiences, the best advice, most of those don't come from strangers. They come from people you know. Friendships open doors. They introduce you to new ideas, new connections, new chances to grow. But if you have no friends, none of those opportunities come your way. It's not that you aren't capable or deserving, but when you isolate yourself, you cut yourself off from the very people who could help you move forward. And let's not forget about accountability. A man, no friends, has no one to call him out, no one to check him when he's making bad decisions, no one to say, hi, man, you're better than this. That's dangerous. Because without that accountability, it's easy to fall into bad habits, to settle for less, to drift through life without direction. Friends keep you sharp. They push you to do better, to think bigger, to stay on track when life gets hard. Now, some men deal with loneliness by pretending they don't need anyone. They tell themselves they're fine on their own, that friendships are overrated. But deep down, that's not the truth. Because at the end of the day, when you have a win, when you accomplish something great, who do you share it with? And when life knocks you down, when you're struggling with something heavy, who's there to help you through it? The answer for a man with no friends is no one. And that's a hard way to live. Breaking out of loneliness takes effort, and it takes courage. It means putting yourself in situations where you can meet new people. It means being open, being vulnerable, and letting people see the real you. It means being willing to invest in relationships, not just waiting for someone to come along and save you from isolation. Because real friendships don't just happen, they're built. They take time, they take effort, and most importantly, they take you making the first move. At the end of the day, loneliness is a battle, but it's one you can fight. It's not permanent. It's not something you have to accept, because no matter who you are, no matter what your past looks like, you are worthy of friendship, of connection, of a life that's filled with people who care about you. But it starts with you making the choice to step out of isolation and into the relationships that will make your life richer. Making friends isn't just about meeting people, it's about building relationships that actually matter. A lot of people think friendships just happen naturally, that they don't require effort, but that's not true. If you're a man with no friends, it's not enough to just wish for connections, you have to actively create them. And the first step to making friends is putting yourself in the right places and being intentional about how you connect with people. If you spend all your time in isosocial situations, waiting for someone to reach out first, you're never going to build the relationships you want. You have to put yourself in environments where friendships can happen. That could mean joining a gym, attending social events, volunteering, or even picking up a new hobby that involves other people. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that friendships come from nowhere when, in reality, they start with shared experiences. The more you put yourself in situations where you interact with others, the more opportunities you create to build connections. Now, being in the right place is one thing, but how you carry yourself is another. You have to be approachable. That doesn't mean changing who you are. It just means being open to conversation, showing genuine interest in others, and being willing to engage. If you walk into a room with a closed-off attitude, if you seem uninterested or unapproachable, people will pick up on that. Friendships start with small moments, a simple hello, a conversation about something you both enjoy, a shared laugh. Those small moments are what turn strangers into acquaintances and acquaintances into real friends. Another important thing to remember is that you can't just take, you have to give. A lot of people struggle with friendships because they only focus on what they can get out of them. They want friends to be there for them, to support them, to check in on them, but they don't do the same in return. If you want real friendships, you have to be a real friend first. That means listening, showing up, and supporting people without expecting anything in return. It means remembering the details, checking in when you know someone is going through something, celebrating their successes, and making time for them even when it's not convenient. Being vulnerable is also a huge part of making real friendships. A lot of men struggle with this because society teaches them that being open about their feelings is a weakness. But the truth is, friendships are built on trust, and trust comes from being real. If you never let people see who you truly are, if you always keep conversations surface level, then your relationships will stay surface level too. People connect through honesty, through shared struggles, through moments of realness. That doesn't mean you have to spill your life story the first time you meet someone, but it does mean being willing to let your guard down over time. Patience is key. Friendships don't form overnight. You can't expect to meet someone once and suddenly have a deep, unbreakable bond. Relationships take time to build, and they require consistency. That means continuing to show up, to reach out, to make plans, to keep investing in the people you meet. A lot of friendships fall apart simply because people don't follow through. They meet someone, they connect, but they never take the next step. They never send that text, never invite them out again, never make an effort to keep the momentum going. And then they wonder why they're still alone. Rejection is part of the process. Not every person you try to connect will become a friend, and that's okay. Some people won't vibe with you, some won't make the effort back, and some just won't be the right fit for your life. But you can't take that personally, and you can't let it stop you from trying.